and I'm the program manager of Brentwood Arts Center. I thank you and welcome you to our virtual auditorium for BAC's Conversation on Art series with our host, Meg Linton, and guest artist, Amanda Yates Garcia. Our executive director, Amy Gantman, regrets that she can't be here today, but joins me in welcoming you. It has been a challenging time for the world and for the BAC as we transitioned our offerings to a virtual format, which allowed BAC to continue to fulfill its mission of providing high-quality arts educational opportunities to students of all. Our success is due to our incredible and generous board of directors, leadership council, donors, staff, faculty, and students who support the BAC through thick and thin. The pandemic has also allowed us to experiment with new technology and create programs like Conversations on Art. I thank our anonymous donor who has made this series possible for the next 12 months. We can only do all that we do because of our generous donors who believe everyone should have access to the arts and education. We'd like to be sure to mention that the new BAC campus in Santa Monica, located at 1625 Olympic Boulevard, is open and summer classes will begin soon. The campus is in close proximity to 18th Street, Crossroads School, and a metro stop is nearby. We are so excited to offer in-person classes once again, so your contributions and enrollments in our courses are more important than ever. Our host, Meg Linton, and BAC Executive Director Amy Gantman met at Otis College of Art and Design while Meg was the Director of Exhibitions for the Ben Maltz Gallery and Amy was the Dean of Continuing Education. The division collaborated on many public programs, and we are thrilled to bring Meg's love and respect for artists to the BAC. Meg has been visiting artist studios for over 20 years in her various roles as director and curator of contemporary art spaces in the Central and Southern California region. Currently, Meg is lead producer on a documentary film about performance art in Los Angeles in the 1970s and 1980s called Acting Like Women, directed by Sherry Galkey. She is also working on an exhibition about the life and work of artist Keith Julius Puccinelli, writing a novel, and of course, conversing with Amanda Yates Garcia for the BAC this afternoon. Welcome, Meg.
Kathleen, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to the BAC and our anonymous donor and to everyone working behind the scenes who makes this program possible. It's June and summer is upon us, so welcome to Conversations on Art and our virtual studio visit with Amanda Yates Garcia, who is also known as the Oracle of LA. But before I introduce our guests, I have the usual housekeeping, which is we are recording today's program, and we ask that you mute your microphone and turn off your video. It's not that we don't want to see your lovely faces, but it helps with the feedback or to avoid feedback. During the conversation, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box, and I will either work them into the discussion or I will ask them at the end of the chat before we close the program out. In the chat box, you'll also see I've put some additional information about our guest and for you to peruse on your own, also with some instructions on how you can save the chat. So if you want to look at that information later. So I met Amanda Yates Garcia while I was researching artists for a show called Tapping the Third Realm. I don't remember who told me about her work, but it was at the moment when Amanda became the Oracle of LA. I went to visit her studio with an open mind, and it was a remarkable heart-opening experience. I ended up including Amanda's work in the show, and we secured a copy of her limited edition book for the Otis Library's extensive artist books collection. Since then, I've been following Amanda's journey, which extends far beyond the walls of a studio, a gallery, or museum. She is an artist, author, and witch with an international following. Instead of me trying to encapsulate her compassionate, political, spiritual, and artistic work, I want to read this quote from an interview she did in 2018. Here she says, "Like many teenagers, for a time, I rejected the religion of my youth. I had to find my own path, which is part of the initiation process. I turned to dance, poetry. Art became my religion. I traveled through Europe studying in Amsterdam and in London, where I eventually earned my BFA in dance theater. Then came back to California, where I graduated with a double MFA in writing and film and video from Cal Arts. It took me many years of study to realize that magic had been hiding in the arts ever since the Enlightenment. Artists have kept the fires of magic burning until now." So Amanda, thank you for sharing your fire with us today, and welcome to the BAC.
It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me, and thank you to the BAC, and thank you everyone for coming out. I see some familiar faces in the audience there, and I'm really glad to be here with all of you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we've got your presentation. I'm just gonna get set up here and get my chat window open so we can see what's going on with the community, and we're ready to start. So
Goodness.
I know you wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. So do you want to do that for us today?
Yeah, well, so in my tradition, which is the lineage of reclaiming, we always start with a land acknowledgement, since witchcraft is a religion based in the land, or it's a folk tradition that honors the land, a spiritual tradition of the land. And since the Magna people of Yangna, which is the land that I'm currently on here in Los Angeles, along with the Kizh and the Tongva, and also the Chumash, whose land I grew up on, have always been the traditional stewards and caretakers of this land. It's really important to remember and honor them and the work that they're continuing to do in order to protect the resources and the connection to the land that we so rely on. And since they are and have been and continue to do this under such adverse circumstances, I just always think it's really important to name that as a condition of the situation that we're all living under now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think this is a really important statement for you.
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I do, I guess some people might call performance, but I don't really think of it as performance, because one of the most well-known axioms in witchcraft is that in witchcraft there are no spectators, or there is no observer, there's no witness, that everyone is a participant, and that everyone is a priestess or a priest or someone who has the right to connect with the divine that is all around them on their own. I think it's also an important political statement, in the sense that really there are no spectators anywhere.
Right.
Spectating is also an action. So yeah, I think it's just it's the way that witchcraft includes all beings in its theology.
Mm-hmm.
Important to me. Mm-hmm.
We are all culpable.
Exactly.
Right? In what's happening around us.
And all powerful, or we are all powerful in being able to affect change in the world. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is your three-pronged practice.
Exactly. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So she has an amazing podcast, Between the Worlds, and then you also have a practice where you perform rituals, but you also counsel and work with individuals.
Correct.
And
yeah.
then you've written this amazing book, which I was telling you earlier. I think I've purchased it 5 times now, because I keep giving it away to everyone because it's so well written. It's a beautiful memoir.
Well,
So
I have a lot of copies because
I know.
they send them to me, so like to give away. So I'm gonna have to send some
Yeah,
out.
I'll have to just keep them in my car. But I think these are the 3 aspects we're going to be talking about today. So we're just going to jump right in, and we're going to start with starting with 2010. We're going to start with some of your first spells that you've done.
Yeah. So
your trajectory.
This was after I graduated from Cal Arts, and then I moved to New York for a short time, like because of a relationship, and that kind of fell apart. And I came back, and I was trying to get work, right before that was the recession, and I was really having difficulty finding work, and the work that I found was really miserable. And I was struggling to find my voice as an artist. And I'd made a lot of kind of angry work in grad school, sort of pointing out all the things that I felt were wrong with the world. And also it felt like a need kind of throughout my entire life to escape from the reality of white supremacist capitalist patriarchy that we all live under, or colonial world. And I just felt like it was really ugly and violent, and I didn't really want to be a part of it. And yet I felt like I was kind of under the thumb of the culture. And so I made an effort to escape into the arts, only I discovered in my explorations of the arts that it wasn't necessarily the escape that I was hoping for, because even in the arts, you still have to respond to the capitalist imperatives of our culture.
There's a lot of politics in the arts.
There's a lot of politics in the arts, exactly. And also, like, you still have to pay your rent. You still have to live like an ordinary citizen.
Right.
But you're still kind of interpolated or called into the system that you might be trying to rebel against. So at that point, I started to think about, what I was doing. And I realized that it's very easy to point out what you think is wrong with the world and the things that you think other people should fix, or something should be done about that kind of idea. But then I realized that what took more courage and potentially was more interesting to me as an artist was to realize that it's harder to stake your claim and say, this is what I think should be done, or this is how I want to live my life. It's not just about resisting something, but it's about offering something in return, or saying, like, this is how I want to create, which ultimately art and I believe witchcraft are about creation. And so it was at that time that I then went back to my traditional upbringing. I was brought up practicing witchcraft, but I'd kind of rejected it as like the religion of my mother. And I wanted to go forge my own path. But then I came back to witchcraft, and this was like the first ceremony that I did where I invited some friends over for my birthday. And I think I still have this tradition where you kind of go around and say something that you offer to the birthday girl, and that was me in that case, and something that you want for yourself, and something that you want for the world. And we built this altar, and we sang these chants, and it was a way of connecting with my community and the people that I love. And ritual is a really powerful and important way to forge connections and to make memories. And yeah, so this was the first one. And now,
So I want to ask real quick, how, was this like claiming your sphere of influence? I've been thinking about that a lot lately. It's like, I can't do everything, but within my sphere.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So
my theory
feels like, okay, I'm going to start building my community around the work I want to do in this very personal kind of moment.
Yeah, exactly. So I decided that rather than run away from the world, that I would just stand on the ground that I was in and just start to enchant the sphere around me. And then also try to find other enchanted people to, like when bubbles come together and they meld into one bubble and expand their sphere. So yeah, exactly. I was just aiming to enchant my house, my life, my friend group at that point, and it's grown a lot. So we can see the efficacy.
Yeah. And then it kind of expanded. You actually were making work and had this opportunity at a gallery, correct?
Yeah.
Performance.
So then I started to do that with my friends, and then many of my friends were in the arts, and so even before this performance, I started to do like little meditations. And my friend Adam Overton was running this place called, what was this called? It was called like the Institute for
Cultural Inquiry.
No, it was like some kind of like strange meditation. It was like outsider meditation or something. I can't remember now. Yeah, so I'd been doing things with him, and then in the arts, if you just start doing things, then people start asking you to do more things. Like you kind of, a teacher of mine from Cal Arts said, you don't go to the galleries come to you. And they come to you because you're just doing your thing. You're passionate about it. You start making your work,
Yeah.
And so I was invited to do something at this show at Human Resources. And it was a group show. So there was a lot of other art around. Like you can see that kind of blue cast on the right side was a video projection that was on the wall. And there were like other sculptural installations. And Human Resources, as you might know, is in Chinatown, which you can basically almost see City Hall from Human Resources. Like it's so close. And so this is a replica of Los Angeles City Hall that I made out of cardboard. And if you've been to City Hall, then you also know that all around City Hall, which is like the voice of authority for the city, is essentially a cardboard city of people who are
suffering.
Oppressed, suffering, disenfranchised, whose voices are not important to the status quo, and who are not considered voices of authority or worth listening to. And so I was really thinking about whose voice we listen to, and whose voice has authority and power. And so I built this as like a little temple. And then I also was thinking about the idea at the time that the city is a living organism. In witchcraft, which is an animist tradition, everything is alive, and we're in like spheres of aliveness. So for instance, within our own body, we have like whole solar systems of, bacteria and other beings who are living inside us. And then we live inside other organisms as well. So I was thinking, what if you could communicate with the organism that you're a part of, as the city is being part of our organism that we're inside? And so I decided to channel the city of Los Angeles, and then people could come into this little city hall and ask questions of the city, and I would answer as I felt like the spirit come through me. And I was really expecting that people would look at this as a work of art. So I was expecting that they would look at it as a work of aesthetic contemplation. I just anticipated that. And because it was in an art gallery, and because there was other art around, but when they came in, they didn't really do that. They immediately became very personal and very kind of vulnerable, most of them, very authentic, and would ask like very personal questions like, my father is dying and how can I cope with this? Or I just had a miscarriage and will I ever have a baby? And then, so that was like 80% of the people. And then 20% of the people immediately came in and were like, I don't believe in this stuff. And I thought that was so strange, because you wouldn't really stand in front of a video installation and be like, I don't believe in this kind of stuff. Like you might say, I don't like this work, or I don't think the artist is accomplishing what they set out to do, but you wouldn't just say, I don't believe in it, because to say that supposes that that I was positioning it as something other than an artwork.
Right.
And so I just found that really interesting, because I felt like there was this power in the oracular,
right,
and that people wanted this connection with the divine, or were so nervous about it that they would immediately like close down and be like, I don't believe in it.
But to create such a little kind of safe space, almost a confessional space.
Yes,
It's also empowered you to see how that works.
exactly.
When you declare it, and when you stand your ground, then this kind of energy in exchange, you make other people feel safe to share. And also you open yourself up to seeing how much people are suffering and how much they need compassion.
Well, yes. And I had a very strong intention to actually communicate with the city. So I wasn't just like, this is made up, but I was like, I'm going to open myself to the experience of whatever comes.
It was a learning moment for you as well.
Massively. And like, so at that time there was like a big line, and, you know, everybody was like, have you seen the Oracle of Los Angeles? Have you seen the Oracle of Los Angeles? And it felt very empowering to kind of feel that title. And then
Right.
I just thought it was so powerful and magical to the moment of my realization that, like, I can call myself this. And then a few years later, it's like written in the Los Angeles Times, like Amanda Yates Garcia is the Oracle of Los Angeles, like,
Manifested it.
yeah. And it felt very like exciting to realize that we can do this, that this is an option for us.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a little glimpse inside. So yeah.
Yeah. So the work is really, I just love that moment, because I think that's where it's just where it kind of happened for you.
Yeah, totally.
And then it set you on this path of making work, but it's also set you on this path of scholarship as well, which is fascinating.
Yeah. And also, when I first moved back to the city, I remember going up to the Hollywood sign and kind of making a wish, like that the city would open itself to me and would show me like what my path was. And also my ancestral roots grow really deep back into California history. Like my great-great-grandmother was like the first woman in Southern California to wear pants and to drive a car, which was very scandalous. And also like my great-grandfather was very responsible for like, he was an engineer in the oil industry. And so like, I feel a sense of culpability to the land here, as a settler, and as someone who's kind of inherited this legacy to try and protect and defend and heal this legacy as well.
So what are we seeing here?
So this was another thing that I was asked to do kind of early in my path to being the Oracle of Los Angeles. And this was at this goose group called Summer Camp Project. And I forget what space this was in, but it was like it was like a bus depot. It was like where buses are parked overnight for school buses. And I was doing this workshop called Totems for the Home. So we were making these like protective talismans and thinking about what home is and what place is and what safety is. And then Nathan Bockelman, another artist, made this amazing, you can see this like labyrinth that he'd created on the ground out of like powdered clay. And we stood inside that. And I love the collaborative nature of the work that I'm doing and that Summer Camp was doing and that Nathan was doing, that which I see as very different in nature from a lot of the ways that we engage, at least artists engage with the art world. The art world often feels like there's a limited supply of success that can be given. And
they
that
really create a false sense of scarcity.
Yeah. And then it makes artists feel like they're in competition with one another and like they have to be like the salmon to get ahead of each other. And so for me, what's really exciting about this way of working is that it's that the more we are together, the more powerful we are. And here, what we see is all of us kind of chanting together and all of us doing this work to charge the creations that we'd all made and participated in making. And yeah, so that felt exciting to me. And it started me on this path of like this way of working outside of the dominant paradigm that I've since developed quite a lot.
Do you feel it's a feminist practice, like a feminist art practice?
I mean, yes, absolutely. In the sense that, feminism is about equality for all beings and is about like liberation and empowerment for all people, especially the femmes of the world. So yeah, it's absolutely a feminist practice because it's about empowering feminists. Yeah. But I also believe that it's, I feel like in the trajectory of my work and over the past 10 or 15 years, largely thanks to the LGBTQIA plus community, and also like the youths of the world, like Gen Z. I feel like my understanding of gender and like the dynamics of oppression and things like that have changed a lot, and also because of the work of people like Adrienne Maree Brown, which have led me to want to think beyond dynamics of like oppression and more about relationality and creating joy, essentially, which I'm not saying that feminism doesn't do that, and there's many different kinds of feminism, but I feel like the circle of feminism, which I was initially standing in and saying like, this is definitely my territory, has expanded a lot of like what I'm trying to accomplish. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been interviewing a lot of really interesting artists for the documentary, and it seems like the feminist circle does start here, and then as you keep growing and learning, because lifelong learning is part of it, and experiencing, the circle grows. And so the ideas that they start with when they're, young, it may seem very simple, but, it expands and grows to include more and more people, not to exclude, which is really a beautiful thing. To see happen in people's lives. So. No, we were going to talk about the book for a second. Yeah. This was actually the book we had in the exhibition.
That's correct. Yeah. So,
it's a beautiful little edition.
Yeah. So I'm going to just read the first page. So it says, the Queen of Angels inside your organs, thrumming her synergistic pulse, her blood mingling with your blood, no separation, no distance, traveling in circadian loops along highways, through the hills, along Mulholland, where the devastation of Carmageddon is a myth. You travel the city as a cell, driving the vascular system of the interstate. So yeah, this was like kind of the first object really that I made, and it was a synergy of all my practices, as a writer, as a witch. And I feel like there's a kind of performative or interactive element as well, because as you can see, it's like modeled like a prayer book. If you hold it in your hands, it's about the same size. It's like a little prayer book that you might find in a pew. And they're called Incantations for Navigating the Cardinal Directions of Los Angeles. And there's one for each direction. And I thought of it as kind of like a liturgy that you could read to be able to explore, the different parts of the city, and there are drawings in there as well. And I keep meaning to reprint them. I have about 100 covers for each of them still. And I keep meaning, it's been like 50 years. This is when you have ADHD and you're like,
yes,
like a procrastinator. Yeah. So should I speak to this one, or did you?
Yeah. So because your work is very much about, at least I see it as, subverting capitalism. And one of your quotes or one of your articles or interviews I was reading, it was, not, being a wage slave, being educated to be a wage slave, really kind of resonated with me, and how our education system, everything is kind of set up to put you into the system.
Yeah, it is. And well, so this piece also at Human Resources was called Capitalism Exorcism. And I don't know if you can see, but on the ground, on the image on the left-hand side, there's all these sigils. And in ceremonial magic of the 16th century, which actually is kind of when capitalism started, or certainly colonialism, there was this intent, or there were all these magicians, like ceremonial magicians, like John Dee, who was Queen Elizabeth's court magician, and they developed this system of symbols that were meant to capture demons or spirits. But part of what they were doing was creating this hierarchy where they could like dominate these spirits and ask them to go out and do their bidding. So it was very much like a replication of colonialism, only in the spirit world. And it was often what they were using these spirits for was to like get money or to get more wealth. They were often asking the spirits to like go out and bring them riches. And so as a countervailing force, or kind of, one of the things I really like about witchcraft is that I wouldn't say that it's a religion of peace, like it's like, no, we'll hit back, like, and we are dangerous. Like a witch is dangerous. A witch isn't like peace and love and light all the time, like by her very nature, or their very nature, they will bite you. Like, don't fuck with us, basically. Right. And so part of this piece was about like exorcising capitalism, or the spirit of capitalism, from each of our bodies and putting it into this sigil, and then, destroying it or eradicating it in some way. And the thing about ritual is that it actually does this in real time. I'm not saying like it does it completely, like we never have to deal with capitalism again, but just by the very fact of all these people gathering together to say they do this, they are doing this, they are rejecting this. And so we would all, like, everybody would say things that like capitalism had done to them, because basically we put it on trial. We called the spirit in and we were like, this is who you are, and this is why we're banishing you. And so, we said all the things that capitalism had done, like got their brother addicted to drugs, or like made it so that their mother couldn't spend time with them, or burdened them with, thousands and thousands of dollars of student loan debt. And there's something about being in circle or being in community and everyone testifying to the same sensibilities, right, that is empowering, and that does give us a sense that we can overcome this together. So I often say, like, we need more and more witches to be able to, like, we need to all become witches. Capitalism is a powerful enemy. Colonialism is a powerful enemy. And it is, I believe it is certainly our enemy. Mm-hmm. If you define an enemy as something that is trying to destroy you, or is like undermining your ability to exist. And we can see that these systems are absolutely undermining the ability of many, many thousands or millions and billions of beings across the planet to exist in a way that is in service of life. And so doing things like this is a powerful way to catalyze that belief that we can overcome in other people. So there was a lot, there's a many layered project.
Well, and again, it's empowering it. So it's getting people to voice their issue, their concern, and then it helps them see how they can change it. So yeah, and also makes the change. It's the ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly. And also to see that other people are experiencing this. And then just in the fact of hearing everybody's voices together. I mean, this is something that, and one of the reasons why I do the work that I do is because, my constituents, my flock, if I was saying it in Christian terminology, they're artists, they come from like intellectual culture. So it's often very difficult for them to engage in some of the more formalized religions like Christianity, Islam, etc. Because, certainly with Christianity, like they can't really believe in it. But yet there's so much power in ceremony together and ritual together, and we don't really have opportunities to do that in our culture. And when we do, we see the power of it. Like now we have it like in sports or like in concerts, people like chanting the same thing together or moving together, but it's very rare that we get that in our culture now. And so I try and create opportunities for that, because there's a reason why people have been doing these things for so many thousands of years, because it has real power and impact.
Right. Well, and you're also kind of providing this very physical experience and this connection that also, at least for me, it feels like I'm gaining empirical experience and knowledge that fuels the intellectual side as well. So it's like, it's a really nice balance.
Well, that's such a brilliant observation, because that is one of the things that rituals do. Is rituals are a vehicle for knowledge, or for cultural knowledge, that can be transmitted in ways that are not, for instance, like in a classroom where you're like, now children, learn this thing about your culture. It's a way of cultural knowledge that is embodied.
Right. So this devouring the patriarchy.
Yes.
So this kind of was a trajectory for several years for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. So I was initially like just coming out in combat against the things that I had felt oppressed by. In this case, it was for men and women. So, if I don't know if there are any men in the audience, but I firmly believe that patriarchy has harmed men as much as it's harmed women. And so, and gender non-binary and non-conforming people, trans people are certainly being very harmed by patriarchy right now. But yeah, so this was about like seeing the ways that we had been indoctrinated by patriarchy, and then also the ways that we had given our power away, that we had conceded power to patriarchal forms. So like and it was also about, we like imagined our father, like patriarchy is a ranking system, essentially ranks men to compete against each other. And it kind of gives them this power, but it also exploits them. And so even though, for instance, my father is like a very patriarchal person, very indoctrinated by patriarchal systems. He was a military man, he's like often like is critiquing women, or like saying like, I won't let a woman tell me what to do or how to think or whatever.
But he'll let men do that.
Yeah, because he's in the military. So like literally like yell at him and tell him what to do. So he's not like really seeing the ways that he's kind of at the mercy of this larger system, because he's focusing on how he's like dominating. Yeah. But so we thought about the ways, like the things that we felt patriarchy had taken from us. And then we had these cloves that we like blew the idea of what had been taken into these cloves. And then we made this bread fetish of like a patriarchal figure. And we put the cloves in the bread, kind of delivering or injecting the thing that we felt like had been taken back into the bread. And then we baked the bread, and then we ate it and took it back into our bodies, and we remetabolized it. So that's that.
How long of a ritual was that? It seems like it was a day or something.
Yeah, it was like an afternoon.
Yeah.
I think we probably did the this part at the beginning, and then while the bread was baking, like did all sorts of other stuff. But I'm like a real marathon ritual holder. I have compassion for the people who come to my rituals, because you can kind of think of it as like a durational artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So solidarity charge. Again, at Human Resources, they've been a good partner for you.
Yeah, they have. It's such a great space. And, it's like very big, so you can have a lot of people participate, and it's a place for experimentation. And especially because, a lot of the time performance work doesn't pay, like it doesn't pay galleries or, whatever. I've done pieces at museums as well, but so, and especially my early days, it was a lot of collective art spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So here, this was again an event organized by Adam Overton, who now is a union organizer, but at the time was working a lot in performance. So here was his segue. And this was like a charge of solidarity for like, like adjunct faculty essentially who were like attempting to unionize. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting about this, and which is something that I've come up against many times in my life, is that this picture was taken, I believe, by a journalist who was there at the event and was writing about it. And they didn't write about my work, but they used this picture. And this is something that I've encountered a lot, which is that it's that same thing from the beginning of my practice, where people would come in and be like, I don't believe in this, right? Like they'd immediately say like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like they can't really charge this water and drink the solidarity from it. But yet they use this picture. And the reason that they use this picture is because you see people in solidarity. They are literally in solidarity. They're all doing the same thing. They're all focused on the same thing. But it's like an intellectual leap that is really hard for people to make, because they're thinking, oh, how can it be real? How can it be quote unquote real that they're charging this water with the spirit of solidarity? And yet it's literally real. Like they're literally doing it with their bodies all together and collectively. And it doesn't so much bother me as much as it's just amusing for me in terms of, I feel like what we're up against collectively in the, you know, the ontology of the culture, or the reality of the culture that we live in, can't find it really difficult to make this leap into beyond rationality. You know, they're like, well, it's not rational that you can put energy into water, but this is not about rational. It's about participation. It's about feeling. It's about sensibility. It's about the body. It's about what our bodies are doing, are being in solidarity. So, yeah.
Well, yes, it's about that. And it's also, you know, I also think that in some ways, the film industry has done a disservice too, because it's like all the supernatural movies and the craziness. And it's like the magic that's happening is way more subtle than that. And it's the energy in a room, or it's how you've discovered a new metaphor and analogy that opens a door for you. So you click and you make a change in your life, or you see something in a different perspective. It's like, so it's, you know, it's not this grand, you know, gesture of being able to fight off a dragon with a magic wand, or, you know, something like that. So it's really beautiful that you pointed this picture out, because it is everyone in solidarity. Yeah. Whether it's in the water or not, you created it as a ring in a room with people.
Yeah, exactly. And like that all of our intentions came together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is, you know, kind of just in continuing with, with the whole thing. This was at Museum of Contemporary Art in Tucson, and this ritual was the first ritual that many people there had done, right? They never participated in a ritual like this before, in witchcraft before. And in witchcraft, a lot of the time you're using chants, and this is true not just of witchcraft, but of many kind of animistic or indigenous like spiritual practices, that sometimes the chants that you're doing don't mean anything. People will often ask you like, what does this word mean? Like there's a famous chant called Echo, Echo, Azarak in witchcraft, Echo, Echo, Azarak, Echo, Echo, Zamalak, Echo, Echo, etc., etc. And it doesn't mean anything, but there's a feeling to it that is like very like urgent and percussive. And here we were just chanting the vowels, but like hearing them all together, like simultaneously, like created this really powerful kind of thrum of collectivity. And any opportunity that we have to be in collectivity with one another, it started off with like tapping their heartbeat. So like they would each tap their own heartbeat. And then the rhythm of the heartbeat, like you could hear it almost like rain. And then the heartbeats came together in activity, and then we started chanting. And so it was a way of literally syncing our bodies and our nervous systems up to one another.
Well, and in that space, the acoustics must have been really amazing because of all the hard surfaces. It was probably bouncing all over the place too.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, there were a lot of I got a lot of great feedback from that one.
So I'm just going to kind of roll through some of the slides.
Sure.
Because we've only got about 10 minutes left. So do you want to just kind of quickly tell us like the circumstances of these?
Yeah, so this was at the Hammer for in collaboration with the artist Laura Schnitger, who made these costumes and the sculptural fetishes in the back. And it was for this idea, like yes means yes. So there's this idea like no means no, like no, you can't have sex with me unless if I say no. But there's also this idea of like more pleasure positive, like if I say yes, it's like enthusiastic consent, essentially. Right. So this was a charge for, but I actually can't remember very much about what I was doing. This was in response to, so this was in 2017, a year after Donald Trump had become elected, and people were really starting to freak out, myself very much included. And the goddess Libertas, also known as Columbia, is one of the patron deities of the United States, right? She is the Statue of Liberty. So it's like an icon of the United States who is literally about liberty. She is the goddess who frees like enslaved people. And yeah, she's like being used as this icon of oppression and like doublespeak. And so this was, I like channeled her spirit and like essentially did this kind of uncanny, almost like possessed kind of monologue, I guess you would say, in resistance. So the title "Liberty is Revolting" is kind of a double entendre, because on one hand, Libertas, the goddess, is revolting against the auspices of the power structures that are using her as a mouthpiece. And then it's also about this idea of the land of liberty as being like a revolting place that is also like an oppressive spirit. So,
do you record your rituals?
That one I tried to record. The only reason that I did it was so that I could get a recording, and all the recordings failed.
Wow.
This was the only picture, and it was taken by someone in the audience. The gallery had a videographer whose recordings failed, and the photographer, I was like explicitly like, I am doing this for the photography. I want good pictures of this performance. And for some reason, there was like a bunch of performances, but the photographer just didn't take a picture of mine because he said that he felt like it was too sacred and that it would be rude.
Wow. How do you feel about that?
I feel annoyed.
It's interesting though, because, again, I'm working on this documentary with Sherry Galkey, and it's like, there's a lot of work that wasn't documented at the time. There are only these still photographs. And that was mostly because there was no access to the technology, or they didn't think about it. It was just in the moment.
Same though, like when you're performing, like the last thing you're thinking about is getting good documentation. So
you're in the moment.
Yeah. And also it's like a young and emerging artist, like you often don't have the resource, like you're asking your friend to do it or whatever, right. And they're getting drunk and flirting with someone, you can't you can't necessarily control it. And like it often, like right up before a performance, you're like doing so much, you're organizing stuff, you're getting your things together, right. You're like getting in the spirit of it and everything, and you're not thinking about it. Yeah. Yeah, the one in the picture before was a ritual that I did with a friend at like up at night in the Hollywood like hills of the like right below the Hollywood sign.
Tell
And
us who Sigrid is.
She's a spirit that came to us of a Valkyrie. But that's all I can really say about this one.
Okay.
And
then because this work has been evolving, you actually have clients who bring you in to do ritual with them, and I'm sure
So
cleanse spaces or blessed spaces or.
Yeah, so I have like a very middle class living that I make out of my work now, and so this is like a production company that I did some clearing work at the production company and like blessed the space when they were going through kind of some internal challenges through like some relational dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Were kind of stuck or muddled. And then this is like a highlight of my career. Somebody like texted me and was like, oh my God.
You're a Jeopardy question.
Jeopardy question. I was like, ah, yes, made it.
Those are the kinds of things that really show your family.
Yeah, exactly. Because like my family's like, what? You're
exactly.
Like, they don't get it. I mean, even as an artist, they're like, I don't really understand what that means. But yeah, if you're on Jeopardy, they're like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So and then you've performed binding spells.
Yeah, so this one, this was a binding spell. And I did this spell at my house. This guy, Michael J. Hughes, started this whole trend of like binding Donald Trump to preventing him from causing harm. So like witches all across the United States were doing this. And so I did it at a spell at my house because I was leading like these rituals at my house at that time. And someone there was a reporter for the LA Times and they reported on it. And then like 7 months later, Fox News called and asked me to do it or to talk about it. And initially I was like, no, I said no 5 times. But my spirits, like my intuition, my spirits, my guardians kept being like, you have to do this. You have to do this. And I was like, no, I don't want to. They're going to threaten to murder me. I even said that to the producer and I was like, I'm afraid people will literally threaten my life. And he's like, we hate it when that happens, but it usually stops after a week. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. But then one night I was sleeping and it was almost like my spirits like ripped the covers off my bed. And they were like, you have to do this. So then I got up in the middle of the night and wrote a message to the producer, like, okay, I will go on this show. And I was really nervous to do it, but I felt like I watched a bunch of his clips and then I was like, okay, I feel like I know how I can take this guy. Like he starts to really go for blood when he sees you getting nervous or defensive. So I was like, he will not get me off my love pedestal. Like I will be open-hearted and there's nothing he can say or do that will make me angry. And so yeah, it worked. I also had some like fetishes in my pocket. I was like doing all these blessings before. And really it was like a turning point in my career because then like
there was so much press after. And also I just say I've included a link also in the chat. So if people want to download the chat. So I'm going to keep going because we're almost out of time, but you've also been, you've done this project.
Yeah.
Part of
Vanderpump Rules, this reality show. So I've actually never seen this show and I've never even watched this clip, but I did it because so many of my friends watch Vanderpump and they love it. And I thought it would be fun. They asked me to do it. And I was like, well, I get asked to do a lot of reality shows, and I'm pretty discriminating about it because, you know, you don't really get paid beyond just your day rate.
Right.
And it just takes up a lot of time. And then also like you end up getting a lot of publicity, but it's like with like, I love my constituents, like they're creative, they're artists, they're deep thinkers, they're intellectuals, you know, they're really awesome. And I love to talk to them and be around them. But oftentimes when I do work like this, like I get a lot of people who are like, help me put a curse on my ex-boyfriend or whatever. So I don't really like to that kind of following, but I did this one because, to impress my friends, basically.
But it's also nice to actually insert magic or ritual into a setting like this.
And I have gotten some, you know, clients from this who were exposed to this kind of work, and it's become really meaningful to them that maybe wouldn't have been.
Well, there was a group of artists, and I can't remember all the details at this moment, but like with, I think it was Melrose Place, where there was like a year where they started inserting artwork into the set.
Oh,
yeah, I think it was Melrose Place. But I just thought that was fabulous. So they were putting kind of these subliminal visual messages within the sets. And it was never really highlighted, but once you started looking for it, you could see it. It was pretty great. So I feel like that is kind of in that vein. This
totally.
piece.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of crossover, like a lot of like interdating going on between like people in the film industry and people in the arts in Los Angeles. And so there's, you know, like the people in the film industry are often putting things from the artists that they're dating or whatever in there. Yeah. This is at MOCA. That was a ritual that I did. I didn't make that amazing like herbal witch's house. That was another artist in the show, and I was just doing a performance there. I can't remember very much about it though.
How are you know, because you are a dancer and a visual artist and a writer, I mean, these images that you do capture and that you do choose to highlight, they have a beautiful aesthetic quality as well. Is that something that when you're making your objects or lead into it?
Part of the power of an object in witchcraft is it like you can feel an object's power. It's very much like the aura of a work of art, so to speak, you know. Like an object has power in it, or like, you know, I think it goes back to that idea about being the Oracle of Los Angeles. Like there's power in names, there's power in objects, there's like aesthetic power. Aesthetics have power. I mean, aesthetics are politics. So
power and images.
Yeah, exactly. This is a ancestral communication workshop that I did at Otherwild, which is a kind of queer shop in Vermont. Yeah. My podcast initially started as a K-Chung radio show. So K-Chung is an artist-run radio like station. And I think I started there in 2013, and I had a show for like 3 or 4 years called the Oracle Hour. And then that morphed into the podcast that I now have, which is called Between the Worlds. And this is a ritual that a love spells ritual that I did at my house with my followers.
Nice.
And this is more healing talismans. So then in 2020, I was kind of forced online, which I'd been like sort of resisting because I've been doing things in my house, and I think I just felt intimidated to like take my work onto Zoom because I'd never done it before. But then in 2020, when like shit hit the fan, the need for ritual was so great. Like I had like a ceiling of like 200 people could be in my rituals on Zoom, and I had to like up my level to 500 because there were like so many people who were just like, I need community, I need connection, like I need a way to work through this stuff that's going on with quarantine and uprisings and all of that. And so I really felt like 2020 really clarified for me like that it wasn't just something I was into, but something that was really, really needed by our culture.
Right.
Is this
Well,
work?
and it was like that your book had just come out.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it was during quarantine that I read your book right away. You know, because I had seen that it had come out and had been on my list. And then as soon as we went locked down, it was one of the first books I opened up.
Oh, thank you.
And so it was just the messaging was what was needed.
Yeah, I felt like it was in alignment.
Yeah.
This goes back to being able to name oneself. So this is a ritual that I've done with my followers before, where we kind of like say who we are from an enchanted perspective. And there's a whole series of prompts that I give to help people. And you know, normally we're like, well, I am, you know, a graduate of CalArts and I'm a dentist or whatever, but we get to define who we are and where we're from and what our spirit is and what we're here to do. So that's what I'm doing here. And I don't think we have time to do a reading, but
I don't know, we don't. We're totally out of time and we have to wrap up. But I do encourage everyone, if you haven't gotten the book, it's a great read. It's out in paperback now too. And you can also find Amanda online as the Oracle of LA, and you can learn more about her work if you don't know about it already before this program. And I just really want to thank you for being so open and with us today and sharing your work and your life and everything that you're doing. It's really wonderful. It adds a lot to the world.
Well, I want to thank you because you were one of the people who first gave me my start by, you know, by having me in that show. That was like the first kind of bigger show that I was in. And
well, I'll never forget that studio visit because you made that fabulous elixir.
Yeah.
Carol and Peter, who went with me, the co-curator, we were just like, it just put us in the best mood and really got us on the trajectory for the show. So,
oh, that's so great. It's really good. It's jalapeno, lime, and cilantro.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you so much, everyone, for showing up. And
thank you. And we hope to see you next month. In July, we have Dmitry Kozyrev, who's an amazing painter, and he'll be joining us from, I believe, his studio in Utah. So we hope to see you next month. Everybody take care. Have a great June.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Amanda.